Now, for an in-depth look at the situation in North Korea, we're joined by webcam by the former US Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, the former US Special Envoy to the Six-Party Talks, and the former US Ambassador to South Korea, Christopher Hill. Christopher Hill, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
What do you think was the driving force behind those missile attacks by the North Koreans?
Well, first of all, I think they have a military these days that really is a law unto themselves. As you know, North Korea is going through a very difficult transition. I think it's pretty clear that the military has not bought on to Kim Jong-un, that is the son of Kim Jong-il. In fact, they've never warmed to Kim Jong-il. So I think what we're seeing is a very belligerent institution in the sea of great, very belligerent institutions in the whole country.
So your belief is the North Korean military has essentially gone rogue?
Well, look, we're talking about a country that is hard to deal with on a very good day, but I think what we're seeing is, and this is the latest example of the North Koreans just doing whatever they want. And I think it's obviously a time that's going to test our mettle. I think it's very important that Washington be in very close contact with the South Koreans as we go forward. But I think we also all have to be in close contact with the Chinese, who at the end of the day are going to have to really rethink their attitude to North Korea.
We'll get on to the Chinese in just a moment, but how much effort will it take diplomatically to stop the South Koreans from responding with even greater force?
Well, I have a feeling that the issue is not so much trying to hold back the South Koreans. I think the issue is to show solidarity with the South Koreans and try to work with them closely on how to handle this. We don't want a situation where these incidents somehow drive wedges between the U.S. and the South Koreans. The U.S. relationship with South Korea today is probably closer than it's ever been. So I suspect there are a lot of very close consultations on what to do next. You know, the South Koreans are not interested in turning things into crises, but they are interested in protecting their people. And so I think we will try to work together with the South Koreans on that issue.
Is it time for China, as you mentioned, to step up and apply greater pressure on its key ally in Pyongyang?
I think it's very much time for China to take a hard look at this ally that they've had. You know, China has from time to time tried to persuade the North Koreans, and I think they need to take a much tougher view with the North Koreans. You know, China's kind of split on the subject. If you talk to people in Shanghai and other coastal cities that benefit from China's opening to the world, they have no interest in maintaining this close relationship with this sort of communist relic. But other Chinese are, in fact, doing just that, keeping a close relationship with a country that is doing no good and, in fact, is kind of holding China back.
What do you say to some of the commentary about this morning that these missile strikes by the North Koreans were an attempt to extract greater concessions of the West and perhaps get those stalled six-party talks back on track?
Oh, I think, I'm kind of doubtful about that. I suspect the little show and tell they did the other day with the American scientist, with Dr. Hecker, was part of that process. I think in this case it's an example of the North Korean military just feeling it can do whatever it wants and get whatever it does.
That show and tell was a reference to North Koreans unveiling its new uranium enrichment facility. Should that be of great concern to the US and other Western powers about just how far along the road this regime has got towards developing nuclear weapons?
Well, absolutely. Now, the clear and present danger that we've dealt with North Korea was the fact that they had a graphite-moderated reactor whose spent fuel was being turned into plutonium. That has been the major problem. And that's why it was very important to have those negotiations, shut down that reactor and disable that reactor. But now we have a new challenge. And I think what is especially insidious about this new challenge is the North Koreans, as late as just 2 years ago, denied having any uranium enrichment program, and they denied it to their diplomatic partners in the process. So I think now we've seen that, North Koreans, I think, have always been challenged to tell the truth, but to sit there with 5 other partners, including China, and say they have no uranium enrichment program when in fact they clearly did, I think that in and of itself poses a challenge to the six-party process.
You've been deeply involved with the North Koreans for many years, care of your former role at the US State Department. How close do you believe the regime is to actually obtaining, building and getting hold of a nuclear weapon?
Well, it's very hard to tell. They did successfully test fissile material, some sort of device. But, putting a device on top of a missile and threatening someone with it is quite another task. The U.S. Missile program with nuclear bombs took us some 14 years to mount a bomb on a missile. So I don't think the threat is absolutely imminent. But the fact is we have a country that isn't interested in playing by the rules and frankly doesn't really care what the world thinks of it.
How unsettling is this latest skirmish to regional stability?
Well, I think it's very unsettling. I mean, in the sense that they are firing artillery shells onto an inhabited island. And I think from the South Korean perspective, this is something that they just can't let this one go. I mean, this is not just some naval problem. This is they are firing weapons. They've obviously ranged those weapons. They've aimed them at an island that has a civilian population. This is a major challenge, and I think what's very important is for the U.S. as a treaty ally of South Korea to be working very closely with the South Koreans. The U.S. is obviously doing that, but I think it's high time that China took responsibility for this country that is a neighbor of it and that has no friends in the world except for China.
As a treaty ally to the South Koreans, should the US, for instance, be mobilising its forces, perhaps sending an aircraft carrier to the region?
Well, again, I think there are a number of options that are probably being discussed. I don't know what they are, but I can assure you that the U.S. will be prepared to do its duty and defend South Korea if that's what it comes to.
Would that include strikes by US forces on North Korea?
Again, I'm not in a position to speculate on what they might do, except to say the U.S. is prepared to do what we have to do, and according to our treaty obligations. But I'm not prepared to speculate on what those actions might be.
But that's clearly would be one of the options on the table.
Again, I don't want to speculate.
Now, there's been a lot of discussion about just how long-range these missiles the North Koreans have obtained. There's some concerns, some fears that they could even stretch to areas like Australia. How much do countries like Australia have to be worried about the potential impact of these missiles and the potential of, as you say, members of the military in North Korea essentially running their own race there?
Well, again, the North Koreans have engaged in a lot of experiments on missile technology. They've taken old Russian missiles, they made them better, they've done solid fuel missiles, they've done multi-stage missiles. But I don't think that's why we or the Australian people need to worry. I think what we need to worry about is a country that has developed nuclear materials and has shown that they're willing to sell anything for any amount of money. So we have to worry about whether the nuclear material that they've been able to produce, they might sell to a terrorist organization. We also need to worry that whether if they really become a nuclear state, will they be the only nuclear state in Northeast Asia? China's a nuclear state, and if North Korea becomes a nuclear state, what will other countries in Northeast Asia be doing? And so I think we have to really worry about the proliferation angle from the point of view of other countries saying, if they can do it, we better do it.
Christopher Hill, thank you very much for your time and your insights this morning.
Thank you.